Alrighty, so I'm going to be the teacher today. I'm here to talk to you guys about things to do with motorcycles. I think I'm going to focus more on engines. So if you guys are ready, we will begin.
Cool. My name's Carl.
My name is Jason.
And I'm Devin. So where I wanted to start is on actually asking you guys a question. What do you define, what is an engine in your mind?
Something that takes some form of input and then outputs enough power, whether it be double the power of the energy taken, to then move something or power something.
That's pretty good. I like
Wow,
that.
that's better than mine. Mine was magic boombox that makes explosions. Because
Okay.
I mean, my
So
understanding of an engine is
not every engine is based on explosions, by the way.
okay. Well,
So-
my understanding of an engine is that like you have something that combusts, right? It gives off energy to push something else that is turned into.
That is a combustion engine. So
yeah, I'm thinking
that that is one form of an engine. However, there are other forms of engines. For instance, a steam engine, it doesn't use any explosion, right?
Yeah.
It just it turns heat into steam. It heats up water to turn it into steam, right? And that creates pressure to drive a piston. It's not technically using any sort of explosion, so it's not a combustion engine. In general, an engine is a form of converting a transfer of energy into usable working energy. Now, they have different efficiencies based on, many things, but in general, most engines are heat engines. So they use some form, they heat something up and they use that heating up of something to create some form of work, be it, moving a piston or, some other form of power, of mechanical power.
So would a battery technically be some form of an engine?
No, but an electric engine is a form of an engine, right? It's an engine. So a battery is a storage medium, so it just stores energy. An electric engine converts electricity into engine.
The question though is like,
energy.
but if I put engine at the end of anything, does that make it an engine?
No, so explain your question.
Well, because you did electric engines, like, well, this is a fire engine.
Yeah, I mean, there are many different types of engines, yes.
Okay.
But in general, an engine is just a form of converting one form of energy into mechanical energy. That's specific, right? It has to convert it into mechanical energy.
Yeah. Okay.
So if it converts electricity into, like, for instance, if you're taking electricity and you are passing the current through water to create hydrogen and oxygen, so you're splitting the chemical bonds.
Okay.
You're transferring energy, but it's not an engine because you're not creating any
Mechanical energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Now
Mechanical output or energy?
mechanical output, energy, there's no, Now, I mean, you could say that you're creating mechanical energy because you're heating up the water as you do this, which causes but it's not usable. So the engines, so internal combustion engines at their simplest are heat engines. An electric engine is not, right? It uses electricity, so there's no heat transfer. It generates heat as waste, but it's not a heat engine.
Yeah.
And other forms of heat engines are rocket engines, turbojet engines, scramjet engines. Those are all forms of heat engines where they heat something up, a gas usually, and that heat creates pressure and you use that pressure to do work.
Okay.
So if I want to...
Well, I was also saying, like, you have experience with jet engines, right?
Jet engines? I mean, I know...
Sorry, no, rocket engines or rockets.
I've worked on model rockets. I mean, I've not much experience, but I know the underlying principles involved. You basically spray some form, like you spray an oxidizer and a fuel source into a chamber, and then you ignite it, right? And then it expands out the rear. It's actually the least efficient form of a heat engine, I think. I'm pretty sure.
Wait, a rocket is the least efficient?
Least efficient, right? Because all you're doing is just expanding the gas out the back. And the efficiency is proportional to how fast the gas exit the rear of the engine.
Okay.
Yeah, so like think about it. If you throw a baseball, if you were in space and you threw a baseball, right, you would go backwards because every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right?
Yep.
Right.
That's physics.
So yeah, that's physics. However, if you threw the baseball twice as fast, you would get, I think, 4 times the amount of energy, but you're still throwing the same mass. so it's more efficient. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So the faster you throw the baseball, the faster this is a tangent, but yeah, I could talk about rocket engines all day too.
I know
Hey,
you
rocket
tried. You were
engines
going to
on
be a rocket
motorcycles.
engineer.
Yeah, I was definitely into rockets for a time. I still am. Kerbal Space Program's a great learning tool for blowing stuff up.
But to get back to what you're saying, like, so if it's the least efficient type of engine, why do we use it for rockets that have to get off into space?
Because it's the only form of engine that will work in space. So imagine using an internal combustion engine, right? An internal combustion engine basically turns chemical energy into rotational energy. How do you use rotational energy in space?
You put them onto giant fins and you flap through space, right?
Well, there's no atmosphere, so the fins don't generate lift. No lift, no thrust.
Okay.
Wow.
Yep.
I still want a spaceship with fish fins, though.
Now, you could use an internal combustion engine in a very even less efficient way to generate thrust, and that's through the exhaust. If you look at drag racers, right? They actually generate enough thrust from their exhaust to pin the car down and prevent it.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's gnarly, dude.
That's why their exhaust pipes are angled upwards.
That's crazy.
No way. Okay, that's cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So there are two main types of internal combustion engines that are used in motorcycles. There's three main types that are used in general. That is four-stroke engines. But in the gasoline world, there's four-stroke and two-stroke, and then there's diesel engines.
I'm more of a two-stroke kind of guy, but okay.
Yeah, okay. You're very funny, Sean. Ha ha ha. So a two-stroke is the simpler version of an internal combustion engine. All that refers to is how many strokes there are in the cycle of an engine. An engine runs on cycles, right? Because we call each movement of the piston a cycle, from up to down, and then down to up, and then down, up, down, up. Okay, so each movement is a cycle. In a two-stroke engine, every time the piston reaches top dead center is the point at which it is at the top of its stroke. It fires and detonates a fuel and oxygen charge. So with a four-stroke, if you look at it, there is 4 cycles. If you look at this diagram, the first one right there is intake, then it's compression, then power, and then exhaust.
Oh,
so it's only generating power on one of the 4 strokes. The two-stroke is generating power every other stroke. So you might say, well, then why isn't every engine a two-stroke engine if you're doubling your power output?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of disadvantages actually, because
are there like diminishing returns too?
Not necessarily diminishing returns, but if you look at this, right, there's less time for the gas to escape out the exhaust, so they're a lot dirtier.
Oh yeah.
Right? So it's not as efficient because you aren't getting enough air into the combustion chamber.
Yeah.
So they do generate a lot more power up top, meaning in the rev range. So as they rev higher, the air has more velocity to be forced into the combustion chamber, as well as the fact that you need to use leaded gasolines, meaning they have oil in the gas. So you have to add oil into the gas, which is dirty. Burning oil, creates all sorts of bad chemicals.
So not the most environmentally friendly engine.
Absolutely not. No. But they do have a lot more torque and top end power, and there are some good reasons to use them, but they're not used in cars at least I don't even know if there was.
It sounds like an
really
engine you would use for like construction sites if you want like a cheap cat machine or something like that.
So it's usually used in smaller engines actually, because it's a
It's
lot
like it's a motorcycle engine style, right?
Yeah,
like that's very much like two-stroke motorcycle.
Also lawn equipment, like your
like lawnmowers.
Your weed whacker is probably two-stroke. Lawnmowers are actually going a lot more four-stroke nowadays.
Interesting.
But there are two-stroke lawnmowers, two-stroke weed whackers. It's just simpler. There's no valves. There's only this one valve if you look right here, and it's just there's an opening that once the piston goes far enough down, it lets the exhaust out and it automatically lets air in.
So it's more for like smaller scale tools, and like a chainsaw or like a weed whacker, like you said, or even dirt bikes.
Yeah, dirt bikes, great example. It keeps it light, it keeps it, it has that torque for going up hills and all that, The advantage of a 4-stroke though is a lot more efficient. It is a lot more complicated. These things up here are called camshaft. Those basically open the valves at specific times to allow the engine to breathe. And if you look down here, the fuel air mixture never goes into the crankcase, so it's not going to be doing any lubrication, so you don't need to add oil. And it has its own oil sump, basically.
Yeah, so the oil isn't going to be creating...
Hold up. Oil what?
So engines
oil
need
sump?
The oil sump. This is called the sump. It's
That's
just
a weird name.
Yeah, it is, but it basically just means where the oil's stored. And there's a little pump that sucks the oil up here and then feeds it into this area and all over.
Oh, so through all the
engine.
other mechanical parts.
It just keeps, because whenever there's metal on metal contact, you need oil in between to prevent wear.
Shares the lube.
Yeah. So engines are awesome. They're super simple, but
they're so cool.
They're simple in principle, but they can get really complicated really fast. So for instance, how do you drive these camshafts?
Magic.
Well, not so much. Magic doesn't work. Unfortunately,
Harry Potter was right.
Is it not connected to the drive shaft somehow?
It is, but there are many ways to connect it, right? So in simplest, you could actually have this in the crankcase. So you in the crankcase. This is the crankcase.
Oh,
that's where the crank of the engine is.
Yeah.
Where I have to hand crank it.
Yep. Yeah. No, not for a long time. That has not been a thing. But if you want to go find a Model T, and
there you go, have some fun.
Just like go on a wheel, just rev it in circles.
Yeah. So the first engines, this was actually in the crankcase, and it was just connected to this with a chain. So they're like it's stronger than a bike chain because it's handling more stress.
Something akin to a bike chain?
Yeah, basically.
Something more akin to maybe a tank tread.
Yeah, it's got teeth on the gears with teeth, and it's going to engage into the chain, and then it would push a rod that would cantilever a lever that would then push this down. The reason you could do this was the first way of doing it is because you could run both your exhaust and your intake on the same camshaft.
Okay.
And it just simplifies things a lot. There's other ways. There are belt-driven cams, but that's not very efficient because a belt isn't going to last as long as a metal chain. If it's a
metal belt?
There are metal cables in the belts, but it's just once the rubber gets hard or it stretches or it's gonna throw your timing off. And if you notice here, that valve opens well. The piston is at top dead center, you're gonna have interference.
Yeah, it's gonna push into the piston.
Yeah, and that's gonna destroy your engine. And that's why a lot of race engines have non-interference engines. So they cut holes into the top of the pistons to...
Oh, so it'll still do its job, but just in case something happens, it'll still function.
Wait, what do you mean by cut holes?
It's not holes, it's not a through hole, but they
little divots.
A divot.
Yeah, little divots just so that it doesn't interfere.
Okay.
Because
go ahead.
I just was saying that as engines get faster, the thing that pushes this valve up is a spring, right? So if that spring doesn't return it fast enough, if it's spinning too fast, this will stay open too long, and that is called valve float. It happens in race car and race engines a lot, and bike engines, just because if you look at the red lines of motorcycles, they're in the 14,000 RPM, like 12,000 RPMs. Yeah, revolutions per minute. They're revving a lot faster, so they need to close faster, and sometimes they don't close all the way, and sometimes, there's interference if you don't have the right piston.
So my question is, rather than not burr a hole, but like make a little hole, because it looks like it's somewhat domed, why not just make it flat where it doesn't actually necessarily
a lot of them are flat. A lot of them are, and those can still be interference because it depends on how much your valves open.
Okay.
But what this is it's a domed head piston, and that is actually good because it increases your compression ratio. So in order to get more power out of it, if you look here,
Oh
this
no, math! No!
it's very simple. It's very simple. This is a diagram of the 4 cycles, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not labeled the same as over here, so I'll have to explain which is which. But I'm pretty sure this is exhaust, this is compression, this is power, or this is power, and no, this is sorry.
It's fine. I'm trying to understand the diagram myself.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's that's what I wanted to this explains the diagram, but I'm trying to make it lamest terms, and it's a little hard.
I appreciate that, but whatever makes it easier
Yeah.
for you.
But in general, the more you can compress the gas before you detonate it, the more power you're going to get out of it.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, right. And the dome on the top basically compresses it more and causes you to get more power out of it. Yeah, the only thing you got to worry about is knock. Engine knock is super deadly, and that is when the gas, the fuel and air mixture in the combustion chamber auto ignites. When you when you compress a gas, it heats up. Well, if you heat it up too much, it's gonna combust, and if it combusts, it's not gonna be in a controlled manner like it should be, and it'll cause the engine to knock. And it's called knock just because it sounds like a knock, basically. Yeah. What it does is it causes this
It sounds like they would blow up the chamber.
Yeah, basically it does
so
a little bit.
Dead.
Not necessarily. Sometimes it can burn a valve. It can completely destroy an engine. It depends on how bad it is.
It depends on how hard it knocks.
Right, yeah, exactly. So if it happens in the compression stroke as the thing's going up, you have, the piston wants to go up, but the explosion just happened and that's forcing it down. That's the worst that can happen. And that's what's going to destroy your connecting rod. The connecting rod connects the piston to the crankshaft, and that's that gray piece right there. And if that breaks, that means that the piston's going to fly off somewhere and, it's going to hit the crankshaft. And then the rod's going to hit the case of the engine and bust a hole in it. And then you're talking about destroying your engine. But if it happens, let's say at top dead center, maybe it'll just cause some vibrations in the pistons and it'll damage the cylinder wall.
Well, what about the middle thing? Would it pop that out? Is that like a spark plug?
That is a spark plug.
Yeah.
Those are screwed in and designed to handle the pressures. You don't really have to worry about that.
Yeah.
You do have to replace your spark plugs after so much time because they do wear out.
Along with your blinker fluid, right?
Oh yeah, you gotta make sure you got the blinker fluid.
We've had personal experience. Like an anecdote. We were in Palm Springs for a vacation.
Yeah.
And we started driving, and the car was getting no energy whatsoever. Just all of a sudden, it was very barely able to accelerate. And we took it over to luckily Volkswagen dealership was nearby. And they took a look at it, and a couple of spark plugs went out.
Yep. If you aren't getting, so basically what will happen is you will get a uncombusted chamber. Basically, it'll not give enough energy to cause that combustion chamber to ignite, and you get no ignition and no power. Most engines have at least 4 pistons in modern cars, at least.
A V4? Am I right?
No, it would be an inline 4. Here, let's.
Oh, sorry.
Engine layout. I can spell.
Yeah, because I know you've tried your best to teach me about engines, and all I learned is there's V2s and V4s.
Well, there are V4s and V5s, but those are mostly motorcycle engines. As the let me see. This is missing a couple, but basically there's a single engine, and the only place you're going to find that is on mostly dirt bikes. In terms of motorcycles, is dirt bikes and really small. Do you guys know what a Honda Grom is?
No. Sounds German.
No, Honda Grom.
I heard Honda Grom.
So this guy, it's a little mini bike. They're actually pretty fun. It's a 125.
Of course, you would look into bikes. Daredevil, you.
Yeah, but this is gonna be a very simple engine. But most engines have at least 2 cylinders, and there's actually 2 layouts of a dual cylinder. This right here is a V layout, and those are like Harleys have V-twin.
Yeah.
But more common is, especially, you know, in dirt bikes and in a lot of the Japanese motorcycles have inline twins. And
Okay.
inline.
Well, kind of like the triple, but just two.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this, but there's only one.
Yeah, it's a straight.
Yeah. And then there's inline fours, which that is the most common engine in the world. This right here. 4 cylinders.
I don't have that, do I?
In what? In your
My car, my
CRV?
Honda.
Yes,
Honda
you
CRV.
do. I don't.
I have a line, or I thought it was a V4. Or is that
No.
nonsense?
Nope. V4s are only in race motorcycles.
Okay.
There have maybe been some cars with V4s, but I can't even think of
So
them.
what you're telling me is
mom
my...
had a V4.
Porsche?
No. Oh my God. What are the
Porsches are flat.
Mustang? She had a V4 Mustang.
Really?
Yeah.
So
back in
you're
the back
saying
in the 90s.
my Honda CRV is not a race car?
Not so much. But and bikes will use pretty much any of these engines up here. There have been some that use this V5, which is really weird because it has a 1-cylinder bank over here with 2 cams and 1-cylinder bank over here. So do you know here? Let's go. So in an engine, right?
This hurts my brain. Too many things.
No, I didn't want the video. I'm hurting your brain? Yay.
No, but look
You're
at this.
learning.
Jesus Christ.
Oh man.
This is diagram.
Oh, this is beautiful right here.
Yeah, you gotta
So,
make sure you send me these things.
Oh yeah, because you're gonna need to put this in.
Yeah.
Oh
Jesus
man.
Christ.
So this
Cool.
is a V8, right?
Yes.
As I can
Yeah.
see,
You
there's
can
4
count 'em.
circles on each side.
Yeah, it's
You
easy
did
to
it.
count the circles. But there's 2-cylinder banks, right? So for every
Yeah, that's
style
okay.
engine, there are 2-cylinder banks, and you know those have the valves in them.
Yeah.
They usually also have the camshafts. You remember the camshaft, right?
Yeah. It's the
one-
little pointed
Yeah.
triangle shape that spins and pushes the
Yep.
valve down.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, I remembered that totally.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to find where it was. There we go. Yeah. So there are also boxer engines. Those are weird. They basically lie flat with 2 pistons opposing each other. Yeah.
It's really weird.
Subarus
What'd you
have
use it
them.
for? Okay.
Yeah, Subarus have them, and the reason these are good is because they lower the center of gravity, right?
Interesting.
So it's a flatter engine, meaning the weight is lower.
Rally
And
cars.
yeah, and exactly for off-road handling, it's going to improve it. You know, you're going to get better grip in the corners and stuff.
So
like
like
that.
a Jeep would do
No.
well with a box twin?
I mean, it probably would be good, but you know, a Jeep's more for like rock crawling and like slow. It's not a rally car, right?
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
more of off-roady car.
Yeah.
It's slightly different.
Rally cars are off-roady cars that are made to go
Mhm.
fast.
Yeah, exactly. And they're gonna be on roads, just dirt roads.
Yeah.
You know, it's not necessarily off.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So for that, you're gonna want something simple, probably an inline 4, or maybe a V6, or maybe a V8,
Mhm.
and you're gonna want a shit ton of torque. The torque is what helps you get to speed, and the power is what helps you,
Mhm.
stay
Well-
at speed and go fast.
It must have been you or somewhere else that I heard, like,
Mhm.
but if you want torque, wouldn't you go electric engine? Because I hear electric engines have
Electric
monster
engines
torque.
do have a shit ton of torque, and it's super controllable. The only reason they haven't really been used for off-roady stuff is their range. So if you're out in the woods somewhere, you
You're not
want
gonna
plenty
charge.
of range. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to get stuck.
Yeah, exactly. But honestly, electric engines would be really good for off-roading in theory.
We have to get the efficiency of them better.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the engines themselves are actually far more efficient than gasoline.
Well, yeah, but the chargeability
yeah.
distance.
To exemplify that, do you know if you converted all the energy in the Tesla P100D, the ultimate Tesla, right? All the energy in the battery bank into gasoline, basically, right?
Yeah.
How much gasoline would you have?
A lot.
No.
That's my guess.
Very
Nope.
little.
you have like a gallon of gas. So
Wait, what?
theoretically,
That's crazy.
like 2 gallons of gas, I think it is actually. But basically, you are running
I'm so
on
confused.
2 gallons of gas in a.
But you're very efficiently running on 2
Yes,
gallons of gas.
Exactly, because you can go 200 miles on 2 gallons of gas with it.
Oh, so it's like the best. It's like electric engine would be the equivalent of the best combustion engine, but it has less fuel.
So the reason why a Tesla has less fuel or less energy is probably a better way of saying it, because batteries don't have fuel. They have electric power.
Yeah.
They have electric energy.
Electric fuel. We get it.
Yeah, sure. The reason why it only has that much energy is because batteries, the energy density, which is it's the amount of energy you can fit into that can be stored by 1 pound, right, is really low.
Okay.
So it takes a lot of weight to store very little energy with an electric car.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So you might be super efficient, but you can go about the same distance because,
All right. I think
it
I'm following.
balances out.
And that makes a lot of sense, because I remember
Yeah.
when the Teslas first started being like mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
they said like you could go from the Bay Area to LA on 1 charge.
Yep.
Which is
Yep.
honestly really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
But to clarify for myself, so the idea is that like if you wanted to do apples to apples kind of a comparison, if you gave a car 2 gallons of gas,
Mhm.
it would have more power, but you would burn it through. You wouldn't get out of the
No,
city.
you'd have the same amount of energy,
Okay.
but you'd go less far because it's less efficient.
Yeah.
Yes.
It uses a lot more
It burns
fuel
more
for
than it
one-
should.
Yeah. So in general, gasoline engines are about 20% efficient. Usually
really
less.
bad.
Usually less. Usually less than that. There are some that can get pretty good.
I mean, and
Like-
to be fair, we've gotten a lot better with
Oh yeah.
controlling the efficiency of things.
And
It's
that-
way better.
The main thing that we have done to improve that is controlling the valves on an engine and controlling the fuel mixture. So remember how I was saying?
I tried my best to remember, but yes.
But okay, here as we go. This is what I needed.
The beautiful,
see-
beautiful GIF.
Right. So remember how I was talking about knock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knock. The one way to eliminate knock is by adding more fuel. So that might seem counterintuitive, right? More fuel, more
Yeah.
boom. But what happens is if you add more fuel to a point where you have too much fuel, right? So you have more fuel than
An
you have.
oversaturation of fuel?
Yeah, exactly. So there's an idealized ratio. It's 14.7.
Okay.
14.7.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I think it's mass, 14.7. Actually, don't know which. Wait, let me think.
Wait, what?
14
know
point.
something?
So you want 14.7 cubic centimeters of air per cubic centimeter of vaporized fuel. I think
Oh,
that's
wow,
how
okay.
it goes, right? So it's very little fuel per air, you'd think.
Yeah.
But if you increase the amount of fuel you use, it actually is less likely to detonate because you are further from the detonation.
Yeah, because you're choking the
yeah.
air, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're basically
Interesting.
choking. Yeah, and that's why. Have you ever heard of a choke on an engine?
Yes, it's like the.
That's
Yeah.
literally what it's doing. It's taking away air and increasing the amount of fuel.
Interesting.
Yep.
That's on a lot of motorbikes. That's how you. That's
Yep.
how you know. I'm thinking of the clutch.
Okay. That's.
I know,
that's
like
way
my
different.
my dad's
Yeah,
old leaf
never mind.
blower had a choke.
So chokes are good because carburetors are a thing. Carburetors are a whole frickin' thing. I mean, I could talk about those for hours.
Let's stick on engine because I feel
Carburetors
like
are
I'm
part of
losing-
engines, Carl.
Ah. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Wait.
But
You mean the fancy thing that goes on all the
diagram.
muscle cars?
No, yeah, exactly, Carl. No,
The
so
thing they had to spit fuel in Mad Max?
sure. So a carburetor simply is just a way of mixing air and fuel.
Okay.
So it shoots. It has a. Do you guys know Bernoulli's principle?
Sure.
You don't, do you?
What was it again?
Bernoulli's principle. All it means is as air's velocity is increased, its pressure decreases.
Wait, what?
So the faster the air is moving, the less pressure it's creating.
Yep.
So not the faster I'm moving, but faster the air's moving.
Yeah. So.
Okay, because I said I feel like I get more pressure if I'm something's going fast, right?
Yeah. No.
Because it's hitting the air and the air's not moving. Okay.
So obviously, if you are moving faster, there is going to be more air pressure on you. But we're talking about the speed of the air.
Okay.
So if you look in this is a carburetor. This is the fuel right here. And there is just an opening right here. So there's a little hole right here for the fuel to go into the air.
Taper jet needle?
This is a little more complicated than I needed, but basically there's a needle that regulates the fuel based on how fast the air is moving. It just makes sure that you're at the right air pressure or not air fuel mixture. So as the air comes in here, oh, that's the throttle. So it would come in. Wait, no,
you're throttle
right.
Valve.
Throttle valve is on the engine side. So it would as the air comes in here, right? It gets constricted. See this? How there's a little hump there?
Or a little bottleneck too, yeah.
Yeah, that constricts the air and increases the air's velocity, which decreases its pressure. And then if you have atmospheric pressure here and lower pressure here, the fuel will move from here to
vacuum. Yes,
exactly. It's basically a vacuum pump and it sucks the air in.
Cool.
A choke.
So magic. This sounds like magic.
Yeah, exactly. Science magic. Space magic.
Physics space magic.
Yeah. And there is a choke would basically just block off right here and it would create a vacuum, a stronger vacuum to pull more fuel. That's what a choke
is. The flappy thing that we normally see in the front, right?
Yeah, that's a choke.
Okay.
For modern engines, they don't use carburetors because carburetors have to be tuned based on the atmospheric conditions you are in.
Really? So, hold up.
Yep.
Quick question.
That makes sense because if you're higher up in the mountain, there's air pressure.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I have to tune it depending on elevation.
Yep.
That's kind of cool.
Exactly. And
cool, but also really frustrating.
Yes, and a lot of if you see on planes, if you've ever heard of a plane's having to adjust its mixture, it's basically closing and opening a valve before the carburetor, just like a choke, to modulate how much fuel you're getting into the engine, because as a plane ascends, it needs less fuel, so it needs to open that valve more and get less fuel into the engine.
Methinks I follow.
Yeah, but modern engines, they just have a valve and a pressurized fuel line that just shoots gas into the engine.
They don't get the cool hood ornament thing.
Yeah, there's benefits and disadvantages.
Well, it doesn't look as cool.
Yeah, a carburetor doesn't need a computer.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, right. So it will just work, basically. Yeah, there are things that can stop it from working, like if this gets clogged, there's a lot of very fine lines and fuel.
If bugs got into it?
Yeah, sure, maybe.
Well, because I'm assuming which end's the front end that's getting, the front end of the car.
So usually a carburetor will have an air filter. Any intake on an engine will have an air filter, so no bugs are getting in there. If you're thinking
this one really wants to die.
If you're thinking those big old stacks on muscle cars with the blowers.
Yeah, that's what I thought we were talking about.
That are using carburetors, but not every carbureted engine looks like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm imagining some of it's under the hood.
Those are forcing air into the engine, basically, because as you speed up, it's a scoop. It scoops up the air. Yeah, and forces it into the carburetor and then into the engine. But fuel injectors, they need a computer to tell it when to deliver fuel. And then you need to monitor how much air you're taking in. So you need a mass airflow sensor. Then you need to know how much oxygen remains in the exhaust gas. So you need an oxygen sensor. And then you need to know all this stuff. So you need to computerize the engine. You need to turn it, make it a lot more complicated. And that's why
a laptop.
Exactly. I mean, kind of, it's a computer controlled thing, which has the benefit of meaning that when you drive your car up to Lake Tahoe, it isn't running rich. because I have driven a motorcycle that is carbureted up the mountain, and you lose a shit ton of power. Like, it's crazy. You will still lose some power, but not nearly as much as a carbureted vehicle.
So
Yeah.
does that mean you just end up using more fuel than you
Yes,
need?
Exactly.
So your gas mileage goes up. Yeah,
Exactly, and that's the point I was making earlier,
Interesting.
is that carburetors are a lot less efficient. They can be as efficient if you tune it perfectly and it's in an idealized situation, but you're never in it changes. Situation change, so the fuel injectors are more adaptable. And as I was saying with knock, right, as you use more fuel, you get less chance of knock, so you have to ride the line, if that makes sense. The leaner you run, the more efficient you're going to be, but the more likely you are to knock. With fuel injectors, you can ride the line tighter, and
because you're able to be more precise with it.
Exactly. And that means you can use these domed pistons right here. You see the dome? That means more compression. You can get more efficiency from that compression because you're getting more energy. And there's a lot of things, technologies that go into, even though the engines are more complicated, they're actually more efficient. There's thousands of technologies that have been invented to improve it.
Yeah, it's constantly being improved and researched and
and we're kind of at a point where it's like,
like, how much better can it get?
Yeah, but there are certain things, like, for instance, there's engines that actually use knock to make it more efficient. What it is it
But knock hurts the engine.
They have to be able to control it very specifically. It's basically getting that line so close to the knock that it happens with the slightest bit of spark, and it means that the flame propagation in the engine. So if you think of the spark, right, it starts the explosion, and the combustion, and it spreads out from the spark plug. Well, if you do it with a detonation, it will all ignite at the same time simultaneously, causing a more efficient burn.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like they set up principles just to break them.
I mean, it's not so much to break the principles that you set up. It's just, trying to run a gasoline engine like a diesel engine, to be honest. A diesel engine, because of the way it works, it doesn't use a spark plug. It uses knock to cause a combustion. But
now, theoretically, what would happen if you put diesel in a combustion engine then?
It wouldn't even ignite. So it would just gum it up and destroy. Like, you'd have to clean out everything.
Oh my god,
it would be a pain.
Yeah. Also, I have a question because
definitely.
I've noticed, like, these are all piston engines, but isn't there like a block, or like there's an engine that's just like a triangle, right?
Oh yeah, you're talking about a rotary engine. That's a whole nother thing.
Do these principles still apply to that?
Some of them do, some of them don't. Rotary engines don't have valves, for one.
Yeah, see, a triangle.
Yeah, so if you look here, right, there's an intake, and as this triangle moves, it will cause it to suck in intake, and then it will compress it on this side, right here. And there's two spark plugs in this. It combusts, and then it forces it to rotate around, and then exhaust, and then intake. Cool. There's no valves, basically.
So this seems like a really efficient one, no? But is it
It's
harder?
not efficient. The reason that it's used is it can rev higher. Okay. It's simpler, right? If you look at it, it has, right?
See,
it's just
Ivan, I can understand
around. Yeah, it's a triangle spinning around. It can spin faster, get more power. It's kind of died out because there's a lot of things holding it back. For instance, at the tips of these triangles, there are fins that brush up against the combustion chamber, walls of the combustion chamber. Those wear out after 100,000 miles.
And then after that, it's dead?
You'd have to rebuild the engine after 100,000 miles.
Wait, what? Yeah. You can't just take out the part and just swap it in with a new one?
Well, it's buried in the engine. Look at this. You'd have to take out the whole ass engine and remove this whole assembly. And
well, to sound silly, why not make it easier to take it out?
Because there's no way to make it easier. How would you make it easier to take it out?
Well, I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but they could easily. I mean, why couldn't they?
I don't know. I'm just saying, if they haven't invented it yet, it probably isn't possible.
It's even less reasonable.
Yeah, but Oh, okay. So yeah, that is engines, man.
Cool,
if there's any other questions you have about them, I can
you
answer.
really
I have all
give
the
me
questions
a lot more
because-
information than I knew before. Like,
Yeah,
same
very
here.
much
I'm
more
still kind of
knowledgeable.
lost.
Well, if you're lost, ask. Go.
I don't
You
know what
know,
to ask.
There's just too much information. I feel
Yeah,
like
I think
information overload.
I'm a little, I think maybe front loaded, but
Uh-huh.
I think you definitely need to send me the gifs because I love that like gif of the main piston that you're showing.
Oh, the one with the 4-stroke?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll definitely link that. Honestly, all you have to do is
wiki
is go to the wiki internal combustion engine, and it's right down next to the 4-stroke.
To learn more, go to your local library.
Oh.
But but I'm curious because I know kind of end things off. I know you are a great lover of bikes.
Yeah.
So what do bikes use? Like
internal combustion engines.
Well, but I'm talking about like I'm talking about the block system.
Oh, the
because you can't
layouts?
have a monster block, right?
Yeah. So
like
engines
it can't have
are
a
rated in
W or a W formation, right?
okay. I never talked about W engines, so I'm guessing you're talking about V engines. However, W engines are a thing, and they are
okay.
Yeah, W engines are 2 V engines pasted together.
Oh,
so that,
I remember you telling me this before when you were when we were working on your car.
Yeah, they're a whole nother thing that I will not get into.
This sounds really dumb.
Yeah, well, it's used in the Bugatti. So it's a shit ton of cylinders. It's like 16 cylinders.
And it's also expensive if it's in a Bugatti.
Yes, it's very expensive. In general, the more pistons you have, the harder it is to work on the engine. Not a 1-to-1, but it's in general. Engine layout. Let's go back to engine layouts. So for motorcycles, I want a diagram. There we go. So diagram, well, I guess it's the same one we saw. No.
Ooh, Pinterest.
The actual image. So motorcycle engines, everything on the top, and this one. And there are some motorcycles, I think, that have done like V6s and V8s as I think there's this guy who put a Viper engine in and made a motorcycle, basically. Look at this. V10 motorcycle.
They do it just as like a proof of concept kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, because not even a proof of concept. This guy built it in his garage.
Oh my god.
Look at this guy. Look at this
it's
thing.
Like, right? I'm fucking bored.
Yeah, exactly.
Silly shit.
And then
this guy's insane. Oh, is it? It's the wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. There we go. Can you see it now?
What? I don't know bikes, but that looks silly.
It's ridiculous, dude. It's 800 cc's. That means 8 liters. So, engines are rated in size.
That size also reminds me of the Dragon bike, quote unquote Guinness World Record of biggest bike.
Yeah, I don't know that bike actually.
Okay, I just remember seeing it on Ripley's Believe It or Not, so I don't know shit about it either.
Yeah, we can definitely look into it later. But what I was saying is, engines are rated in sizes. The size is how much fuel and air it can suck in one stroke. So in the intake stroke, when the piston at its bottom dead center, how much volume is in the combustion chamber at that time. Now, if you have 4 cylinders, you calculate how much volume you have and multiply it by 4. This one has 10 cylinders, so you divide 8 liters by 10, and that's how much you'd have per cylinder.
Okay. But for those who can't do the math, what is that?
Okay, 8 divided by 10 is, it's going to be 0.8 liters per cylinder. That doesn't matter. Basically what it is, the bigger the engine is, the more power it's going to have in general.
Makes sense.
Yeah, the only thing is certain engines will have different power per liters, so you can get more power out of an engine that is smaller or the same size by making it more efficient or making it, have different characteristics. But usually bikes are about bikes range from 125 cc's, so this is 8,000 cc's, 125 cc's, all the way up to about 1,000 cc's. There are some production motorcycles that go up to like 14 liters or 1,400, god damn it, 1,400, sorry, 1,400 cc's. But the size of the engine just means how much power it's going to be. So yeah,
Makes sense.
Okay. Wow, that means there's such a wealth of information. I don't even know what to do with all of it.
There's
Yeah.
a lot. There's
Yeah.
a lot.
I know.
But it's all really cool. I really
It is
Yeah.
really cool. But what I'm curious is,
more, but
no, I think you did fine. Like I'm able to understand it. And my eyes usually glaze over when I ever hear engine stuff, but I was able to follow
it at least.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're getting close on time.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
A lot of these principles could you apply to a steam engine, or it just wouldn't work?
So there are certain principles, like for instance, the valves right here. You'd have a high pressure side and then an exhaust side, right? So you'd let in the high pressure steam. You'd open this one when it's at top dead center, and that would push the piston down. And then you'd close it at bottom dead center and open this one, and it would allow it to exhaust up. And that would be a steam engine, right? The only other things you'd have to consider is how you're heating up the steam and how you're, modulating the pressure so it doesn't
with magic, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, whatever you're wanting to do. Yeah, basically it's going to look very similar to this, except it's a lot lower revolutions per minute. Way lower. So much so that this isn't enclosed. So if you look at a train...
Oh, wait, is that the shit on the side of the train, like the wheels?
Yep, exactly.
What?
Ooh, that's cool.
I need the side profile. Okay, so right here.
Okay.
So this is the piston. That is the piston rod, the connecting rod, and it just shoves the wheels, like it shoves the wheels back, and then it lets it go forward, and then it shoves them back with steam. And this is the combustion chamber, basically. Yeah, so it's it's the same thing, just it's gonna look differently because it's a different application.
Okay,
cool.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I think that's about it.
Funny.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was really fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I know now that when I'm just gonna get an electrical engine, so I don't have to deal with any of this.
Tesla.
Hopefully, the solid state batteries become a thing.
That sounds cool.
It increases the energy density of the batteries by
so it can hold
8
3 liters.
Maybe.
Who knows?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Devin.
Yeah.
My name's Carl.
My name's Jason.
And my name's Devin. Thanks for listening and learning.
Heck yeah.